What's up, everybody? School is back in session. How's it going? This is 3X. You finally get to see the face, the man behind the madness. Yes, with a pretty epic beard, kind of like Daniel Bryan, except not quite. Can't get at the girlie out the whole way through. But anyway, you're probably wondering if that's a bare ass in the background. No, it's not. She's got underwear on. She's covered. Okay, so just calm down. No need to flag this video. But anyway, this is the first CAW University tutorial video that I've done in a while. And what I wanted to do actually was a little bit of a morphing tutorial. It's something that I've been asked about a couple of times, so I figured I'd knock one out last year, or was it 2 years ago? I don't even remember. I think it was WWE 13, or was it 12, that I had did the muscle girl morphing video on how it is that you could morph a larger sized female wrestler. So now I'm going to do the reverse of that and show you guys how it is that I morph larger sized male wrestlers. And it's kind of a lost art, to be honest with you. Obviously, in the new age of professional wrestling, a lot of guys are high on lighter wrestlers. Cruiserweight, light heavyweight, junior weights, guys like CM Punk, Daniel Bryan, Dolph Ziggler, Austin Aries, guys who are a little lighter, more agile, and a little quicker around the ring. You tend to see that a lot with original CAWS also, because it kind of gives you that balance in the attributes as far as having a decent amount of grapple power, and then having that added strength, that added speed, I should say, and agility to be able to hop up on the turnbuckle and bounce around the ring and have those type of matches. But myself, I'm an old school wrestling guy, and I grew up watching heavier wrestlers, your Hulk Hogan's, Randy Savage's, Andre the Giant's. So I'm more accustomed to watching bigger, more muscular wrestlers. Ultimate Warrior is another one. Sting, guys like that. Bigger men. Old style pro wrestling, as I like to call it, because that's always been the type of wrestlers that guys like Vince McMahon and old school promoters were looking for, were the more bigger, more muscular guys, because they wanted to have wrestlers and characters that came off as being more larger than life back in the day, as opposed to the typical everyman type of, more relatable, smaller wrestlers that you see nowadays in pro wrestling, in WWE, TNA, over in the independent circuits and so on and so forth. So, I'm going to show you guys how it is that I do my morphing for the typical type of CAWS that I make, which are heavyweights and above. Normally, I might have a handful of lighter wrestlers, but 95% of the male CAWS that I usually make are 240 pounds and higher. That's just my style. It's just my preference. And if anybody ever wanted to, try their hand at making a big man CAW, then this would be the tutorial that you would want to take a look at. So let's get started on that then, shall we? So this is specifically about body morphing, like I said. We're not going to touch the face. We're going straight to the body morphs. And before I show you what it is that I do, what I want to do is show you what it is that you shouldn't do, which is go down to size here and pick one of these skins right here and just think that you're good just with that default body build right there. Yeah, you have the texture there that is more defined, you got more cuts and so on and so forth. But the model itself is a little on the flat side. You want to kind of try to flesh that out a little bit. So if you're going to pick this build, there's a little bit more work that you're going to have to do to make it look more bigger, for lack of a better term. But you're pretty safe using either build number 3 or build number 2 if you wanted to make a really muscular type of wrestler like Brock Lesnar or Dave Batista or Rob Terry type wrestlers. But what I'm going to do is show you first how to make a typical 3X style heavyweight wrestler, which I can generally make look like they're somewhere between the 275 to 280 pound range, just by kind of stretching out certain elements on the default CAW model. So here we have the default CAW model, nothing touched, and we go straight into the shape. And this is how you will make a CAW that looks bigger, but in actuality is the same model weight as your typical regular old CAW. It's all in the execution, people. So you start with the neck, and obviously you want to shorten that out because the top half of the body has to have a certain proportion to it. And you're going to hear me say proportion a lot when I'm talking about body morphing here, because you want to have everything in sync with each other. You don't want to have a CAW that looks kind of mutated. So think in terms of every time, if ever you've seen a more muscular gentleman, like a bodybuilder or something, or if you've ever checked out muscle magazines and see how they look, or even if you've seen the 3 guys that I've talked about before, you notice that their necks are thick but not very long. You do also have some, bigger muscle guys who have kind of long necks that don't really look right. I guess that's just like, just genetics or something like that. It's just how their body's built or something. But what we're going for is ideal builds here. So they don't have to be completely realistic. I've said that before too. It's all in preference. So long as there is a certain level of realism, you don't have to be completely accurate. That is the key. So as you can see, what I've done here is I've shortened the neck out and made it thicker, about 50 in width and depth, and that's going to match up to all the rest of the morphing that you're going to see here. You can already see the kind of difference that the thicker neck looks or makes look compared to the rest of the body. You have to widen out the rest of it to go with the neck. So here we have the chest. It's optional whether it is that you want to adjust the height. You can if you want to make the chest look a little bigger and more defined, like he does 1,000 push-ups or bench presses 500 pounds with one hand. It's all up to you. I'm just going to beef that up to 20, and the width is what you want to mess around with more. You can see the difference now as far as how the width is proportionate to the neck. You kind of have that triangle shape going there, which is the ideal muscle build. That triangle kind of taper look where it's thick on the top and it slims down towards the torso area. That's the effect that we're basically trying to make here. So the width we have at about 65, basically between the 50 and 60 range is where you want to keep things. Same thing as far as the depth goes. You can probably stand to keep that under 50, maybe 30 or 20, but you can see how the proportion is now from the neck to the chest as far as the depth goes, and then as far as the width goes. Everything is in order. And angle is another one that is an optional choice for you. If you increase it, it kind of creates, how do I put it? Kind of makes them look like man boobies, pretty much. You want to increase it, say if you maybe had an overweight or an obese core, to create that kind of effect. And on the opposite side of the spectrum, if you drop the width, the angle, I should say, then you create more of a kind of elongated chest effect, which can work for a bigger, more muscular core. Or you can leave it default. That's up to you. Once again, those kind of little things there are completely up to the preference of the person who is making the call. You can do whatever you want to there. Those are just my suggestions. So we'll keep that at default. Now, traps. This is an important part here, because this basically is what's going to create the V taper effect that I was talking about more than anything else. And the most important part is the length. You'll see what happens when you decrease it. It makes the neck look a whole lot longer. That's not the effect that we want to have here. We want to make the neck look even thicker than it is. So you increase the depth. If you make it up to the 100 level, then you're talking kind of like that old Brock Lesnar no neck old school build that he had when he was really, really defined, like when he first came into WWE. So we're going to keep that there, but you can pretty much mess around with that from default 0 and up. Basically, just however it is that you want it to look like. For the sake of this build, I'm going to make it 100 to make it really stand out. And the width, you pretty much can do the same thing here. It's not very noticeable in the CAW model here, but when you see it in game, you'll notice the differences. Same thing with the depth there. As you can see, things are kind of piecing themselves together here, and you should be getting a bit of an idea of what it is, or the effect that I'm trying to create. Now, hand in hand with the traps comes the shoulders. If you've seen the Muscle Girl tutorial, you've seen or you've known that I've said that before for females. Same thing applies to the males, because it's all here, basically. Traps are under the neck, shoulders under the traps, and it all comes together. So the main thing is the width. Since we've widened out the chest and the traps, you could stand to widen out the shoulders just a bit. Not too much though, because that's important. You'll see the effect that it creates when you widen it out completely. That is not very realistic at all there. So stay away from 100. Keep it within 30 to maybe 40, 45 at the largest, and you'll have a pretty good effect as far as the width goes. As far as depth goes, you don't really need to mess around with that much, because that only thing that's going to do is make the shoulders look broader from the sides. From the front, it's not really going to be as noticeable. And when you increase the arm size, as in the biceps and the forearms later on in the model, that's when you're really creating the bigger, largest arms in the world, 22-inch python effect. Not so much with the shoulders. So you can bump those up a little bit. Not really necessary though, in my opinion. Now, as far as height goes, again, that is a preference thing, but depending on whether or not you are increasing or decreasing, you can create a certain body build effect. Like, say, for example, Batista, who has more prominent traps, but his shoulders are kind of low. You can drop them a little bit and you can see the difference, you know, as opposed to, say, Brock Lesnar, whose shoulders are kind of normally proportioned. And then you got a guy like Rob Terry, whose shoulders are pretty high. Now, the problem is the CAW model itself. If you increase the shoulders to a certain level, they do kind of look kind of squarish, you know, polygonal. That's just the graphics themselves. So, if you're going to bump them up, 30 is a good number to top off at. You don't really need to go any higher than that. But personally, I leave that alone. I don't mess with the height at all. I just leave it as is. And maybe for the sake of this, we'll put it to 15 because it looks like it's creating the exact type of effect that I want to create. And you can pretty much see exactly what that effect is. Again, this is the default CAW model. We're just beefing it up, pretty much. So then we go down to the abs, and you can see the abs are kind of smallish compared to the top half. This would be a guy who's done a lot of chest work but doesn't do so much as far as crunches and dips and sit-ups and all the rest of that stuff. So we want to bump up the width, most importantly, to create the look of having more muscle mass, more body mass. And to proportion that, you can boost the depth up to about the same number, maybe a little less, because the more you increase it, the more you make more of a belly. And we don't want to make that kind of effect. Not unless that's the type of CAW that you want it to make, you know. That's just your own preference once again, but we're trying to keep things to a certain level of proportion. So you see here exactly how everything is stacking up. The chest and the abs and the shoulders and the traps and everything is coming together. So the height here, once again, I don't touch. Really, that's just a matter of how it is that you want the overall build to look. Just to kind of demonstrate, if you drop it down, you make the top half of the chest look a little thicker. Kind of like how Brock Lesnar's build is. And then on the other hand, and if you increase it, you make the abs look longer, and it kind of creates a more tall effect. Kind of makes him look more elongated, kind of like how Rob Terry looks like. But we're going to keep that at the default 0. And going back to proportion again, what you do with the abs, you want to do with the waist. Because right now you can see that waist is looking really, really thin compared to the top half of the body. So you're pretty safe keeping it at the same number at or close as you morphed the abdominals. So I had the abdominals at the 20s. We're going to beef up the waist to about the 20s as well to keep everything nice and streamlined, straight with each other. And then we go into the arms. As far as arm length goes, I keep that at default because you don't really need to make the arms that longer unless you are unless you adjusted the abdominals, because you want the arms to kind of be longer than the abs are. So if you made the CAWS abs longer, you probably want to make the arms a little longer, or else he's going to look like a Tyrannosaurus Rex. You don't want that. So we're going to keep that at default. And as I said before, here is where you kind of create the look of having larger arms. And that is at the biceps and the forearms. You don't really need to beef them up that much to get that effect though. Maybe 20 or so is a safe enough number. You might not even need to go that high, which is the thing here. That's the secret. You don't need to do a whole lot of massive morphing to create a bigger looking CAW. And that's the trick. That's the secret right there that a lot of people don't know about. They think that you, in order to make a big looking CAW, you have to make everything extreme. It's only subtle differences and changes that you're making to the CAW model to create a total effect. It's just how it is that you proportion everything that is going to create that effect. So biceps, we got it 10. And you see everything is pretty much straight and aligned with each other perfectly. So we do that same exact thing with the forearms. If you want, you can make the forearms a little bigger. Not really necessary, but I'll make them slightly larger. And then the same thing with the hands. We'll go down here, because if his arms are longer, you might want to make his hands a little bigger too. Just preference, just your own choice. I usually bring those up to about 11. Don't really need to mess around with the length, just the width and the depth to kind of make the hands look bigger. You don't want hands that are as big or bigger than the CAW's head. That's important. See how my hand is? Now, granted, I kind of have small hands, but the hand should not be as big as the guy's head, pretty much. That's your motivation right there. Then legs, basically the same thing with the arms that I said earlier applies to the legs. If you are increasing the height of the abs, then you want to increase the height of the legs and the arms to be proportionate with however long it is that you made their abs, because you don't want them to have stubby legs or stubby arms. So since we didn't do anything with any of that, we're going to keep that at 0. But if I could just demonstrate what it is that I'm talking about here, if you drop the legs, now he looks like a dwarf. And if you bump him up, now he looks like a giraffe. Yeah. So you get the idea. We'll keep that as is. But the important thing here, though, is with the width of the thighs and the calves. Because you want to create size in the legs, but you don't want to make them too thick, which is the tricky part, because, you know, you don't want him to look like a typical bodybuilder that focuses on the top half but doesn't do any leg work, so it looks like he's walking on stems. So we're going to increase those ever so subtly. Trick is, you don't want the inner thighs to touch each other. See that? That's too thick right there. That's about 40, 39. We don't need to go that far. 20, 22 at the tops would be just fine for the width. And you see that it slenders down from the abs to the waist, out to the legs, down to the thighs. It's perfect. And you can do the same thing for the depth. You can actually make the depth of the thighs a little thicker, because that will create the illusion of having bigger, more muscular legs. More with the depth than with the width. And the same thing goes for the calf muscles as well. For the calves, once again, 20 is a safe number. You can go a little higher than 20 for the calves, because 9 times out of 10 they're going to be covered in boots anyway, so you're not really going to see them in the first place. But for the sake of keeping everything proportioned with each other, we'll pick a safe number of 24. And we'll pick a safe number of about 27 for the depth of the calf muscles. And there you see the complete total end result from start to finish. This guy looks like he's about 270, between 260 to 275 maybe, larger build, but not necessarily completely brutish, because he's not using the bigger super heavyweight builds that you would typically use for a bigger CAW. It's just for the sake of the illusion of this guy, obviously spends a lot of time at the gym and, has more muscle mass than your typical professional wrestler. That's pretty much the style that I use for most of my male CAWs, because once again, it's just my own personal preference from my own experience in watching pro wrestling. I said in pro wrestling like I've actually wrestled before. Never done it a day in my life, but it's just the means of the madness right there. Now, I want to also point out one other thing before I call this one off, and that is the size of the head. You can make the size of the head a little bit thicker and bigger if you choose. It's not really necessary. Everything is pretty much proportioned. You're not going to increase the size of your head. If you went to the gym for 25 years and your body was completely muscle and you only had like 3% body fat and you look like one of those guys from the muscle magazines, your head's pretty much still going to be the same size that it was when you started going to the gym. So you don't really need to worry about that. I personally don't worry about it, only when necessary. So yeah, that right there is pretty much how it is that I do my body morphing for the typical larger wrestler. And for those of you who are wondering, now you know how it is that I do it. So I guess maybe next time I'll focus on an actual super heavyweight type CAW, but it's pretty much the same idea as this here that you're seeing. The only real difference is the size of the base model itself and what it is that you have to morph. It's just really a matter of how it is that you want the total package to look like. So long as everything is proportioned and you stick to those safe numbers, you're in pretty good shape. That's pretty much it. So yeah. Thanks everyone for watching, and if you have any other requests or any other tutorials that you would like to see in the future, feel free to drop me a line here either on YouTube or over on the CAWS.ws forums, which will be prominently displayed in this video somewhere around this point here, and also in the comment section or the description section or whatever freaking section it is down below. And I know there are some other requests that I've gotten. I will get to those tutorials as soon as possible, but in the meantime, this one's gone almost 30 minutes. Kind of long, but hopefully you take something out of it and go out there and use this stuff. But remember, this is not how to do it, it's how I do it. To kind of quote a couple of fellows that I follow on YouTube, you can do what the fuck you want. Yeah. Look at that. Look at that phone. Respect it. Yeah, I always wanted to do that. Sorry, I couldn't help it. Alright. Until next time, this is 3X. I'm out. Class is dismissed. See you next time. So long. And I'm hitting the off button now. Later.